My wife cheated on me with our divorce lawyer, then suddenly claimed she's owed $200, $0 in a settlement we never agreed on, and now our entire estate, worth over $1 million, is tangled in a court battle I never saw coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife cheated on me with our divorce lawyer, then somehow managed to turn a simple split into a legal nightmare worth over $1 million. Honestly, it all started with little signs, things I brushed off or blamed on stress. But looking back, there were moments that should have tipped me off. The late nights she claimed were work-related, the strange texts she'd hide on her phone, the way she'd get defensive whenever I asked about her whereabouts or her conversations. I just thought she was stressed, maybe tired of me, or maybe just drifting away. But the truth was much darker. The first real clue hit me when I unexpectedly found her phone open one night. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, drunk or exhausted, I wasn't sure which. I saw a message pop up from a number I didn't recognize, something about seeing you tonight, followed by a kiss emoji. My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew it wasn't her usual circle. When I confronted her the next day, she brushed it off, said it was just a friend she'd been talking to about work stuff. I wanted to believe her, but I knew better. You don't get messages like that from a friend, especially not at midnight. Over the next few weeks, little things kept piling up. She started dressing differently when she went out. Less like my wife, more like she was trying to impress someone. She'd leave the house saying she was meeting friends, but her stories never quite added up. I noticed her phone was always on silent, her texts deleted before I could even glance at her screen. And then there was the money. She started spending more, expensive dinners, trips I didn't know about, clothes that didn't fit into her usual budget. I asked her about it, but she lied, said she was just treating herself after a stressful week. One night, I followed her. I didn't want to do it, but something told me I needed to see the truth. She met up with a guy near that fancy downtown bar, tall, handsome, definitely not a friend. They hugged, kissed in the shadows, and went into a hotel. I watched from a distance, heart pounding. That moment crushed me. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with our own lawyer, the one we'd hired to help us get through the divorce. It was like a punch in the gut I still feel today. When I finally confronted her, she called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, that I was seeing things. But I had proof, photos, her hotel receipt, the text exchanges I'd secretly saved. Still, she spun this elaborate story about how she was stressed, how she and the lawyer, Jake, his name was, had a special connection that was purely emotional, that it didn't mean anything. Yeah, right. She told me she was just venting, that it was just sex, and she didn't want to ruin everything we'd built. But I could see through her lies. The way she looked at him, the way she was always on edge around him, it wasn't just emotional. It was something real, and I was the last to know. That's when the whole house of cards started collapsing. Because it wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about what she was hiding: money, lies, manipulation. She started claiming she was owed a settlement of $200, $0 from our divorce, which she insisted we'd agreed on, but I swear we never did. Then she threw in a curveball, saying our entire estate, worth over $1 million, was now tangled in some court battle she'd initiated. I had no idea she'd been planning this, or that she'd been secretly working with Jake to manipulate the legal system. It was like I was waking up in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I felt betrayed on every level, by her, by the lawyer I trusted, even by myself for not seeing the signs earlier. The anger, the confusion, the sense of loss, it all hit me at once. I used to think I knew my wife, that we had a good life. Turns out, I was just a fool who missed the clues. Now I'm stuck fighting a legal battle I never saw coming, trying to hold on to what's left of my life, and trying to understand how someone I loved could turn so cold, so calculating. This isn't just about cheating anymore. It's about betrayal on a scale I never imagined. After the initial shock wore off, I started digging into everything I could find. I wasn't going to sit around and let her run the show, especially not with that lawyer of hers, Jake. I knew she was lying about the settlement, and I suspected she'd been planning all this for a while. The more I looked, the more I uncovered: hidden bank accounts, shady property deals, and a mountain of legal documents that didn't make sense at first glance. She had been meticulously orchestrating this whole mess behind my back, and I had no idea. One night, I found a folder labeled Settlement and Assets buried deep in her laptop's files. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I needed to know what she was up to. The documents revealed a detailed plan to claim an enormous settlement, $200, zero she kept insisting we'd agreed upon, even though I knew for a fact that we never did. It was all part of her scheme to squeeze more money out of the divorce, to turn the tables and leave me financially decimated. She'd been manipulating the legal system with Jake's help, filing paperwork that looked legit but was full of lies and exaggerations. What really got to me was the way she lied about the whole thing. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but now she was downright ruthless. She kept insisting I was overreacting, calling me paranoid, and telling everyone how I was just jealous or insecure. Meanwhile, she was secretly plotting her own version of a life I wouldn't recognize. She convinced her family, friends, even the lawyers, everyone but me, that she was the victim, that I was the one causing trouble. But I knew better. I had seen her with my own eyes and I had proof. I also discovered that she'd been funneling money into accounts I didn't know about. She'd been draining our joint savings, buying properties and hiding assets in her sister's name, anything to make sure I couldn't get a fair share. I was furious. It was like she was willing to burn everything down just to get her way. I started to realize she'd been planning this for months, maybe even since we decided to divorce. The whole time, I thought we were just splitting, but she was building an empire of lies and deception. I decided I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it, especially not with Jake, the lawyer who was in on the scam. I contacted my own lawyer, someone I'd trusted for years, and handed over all the evidence I'd collected. It was time to fight back, to expose her and put an end to her game. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. She had money, power, and her own lies to back her up. But I had the truth, and I was determined to use it. Meanwhile, she was still playing the victim. She'd call me crazy, say I was trying to ruin her reputation, accuse me of being controlling, but I could see through her act. When she wasn't looking, I'd catch her sneaking around, making secret calls, or meeting with Jake in places I wasn't supposed to know about. It was obvious she was trying to cover her tracks, but she underestimated me. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not after everything we'd been through. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She'd been lying about her feelings, about her intentions, and about her entire plan to screw me over financially. It was like I was married to a different person entirely, someone cold, calculating, and willing to destroy everything for her own gain. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt beyond words, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about her trying to take everything I had and me fighting to keep what's mine. Now I was in full legal mode, preparing for the fight of my life. I'd never been through anything like this, but I knew I had to stay strong. I had to expose her lies and protect what little I had left. All I could do now was wait for the right moment to strike back, to turn her own game against her, and to finally put an end to this nightmare. I never thought I'd say this, but I was ready to fight dirty if I had to, because she sure as hell was. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, late-night research, and trying to keep my head together. I had to stay sharp, especially because I knew she was scheming behind my back. Every time I thought I had uncovered enough, she'd surprise me with some new lie or twist. She kept insisting her settlement was justified, that I owed her all this money she claimed we'd agreed on, and that I was just being a jealous, insecure husband. But I wasn't buying any of it anymore. I'd seen her with my own eyes, and I had the evidence to prove she was lying. Yet she still tried to gaslight me, call me crazy, and paint herself as the victim. One afternoon, I decided to confront her directly. I told her I knew everything. The hidden bank accounts, the fake legal documents, the affair with Jake. I laid it all out on the table, expecting her to crack or at least show some remorse. Instead, she just sneered at me and said, "You're overreacting as usual. You're just jealous because I found someone better than you. Jake's just a friend, and this whole thing about money, It's all in your head." She looked me dead in the eyes and lied through her teeth, claiming she was owed that money because I'd been neglecting her, that I'd been controlling and mean. Her reaction was infuriating, but it also confirmed what I already suspected. She was trying to manipulate everyone around her, including the court, into thinking I was the bad guy. Meanwhile, she was secretly planning her next move. I could see it in her eyes. She was desperate to keep her lies intact, to keep the illusion alive that she was innocent and I was the one causing all the trouble. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I was ready to use it. That night, I stayed up late going through every detail of the legal documents she'd been filing. I was looking for holes, inconsistencies, anything that could disprove her claims. That's when I found it, a clause in her court filings that suggested she was trying to claim assets that didn't exist, or that she'd inflated the value of certain properties. It was clear she was trying to pull a fast one, hoping the court wouldn't catch on. I printed out everything I could find and handed it over to my lawyer the next morning. I told him to prepare for a fight, because I wasn't going to let her get away with this scam. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, acting helpless, claiming she was the victim and accusing me of being the one who was trying to ruin her life. She'd call her friends, cry about how unfair everything was, and spin stories about how I'd been abusive or controlling. It was disgusting, but I couldn't let her get away with it. I knew her game. She was trying to turn the court and everyone around her against me, to make it seem like I was the bad guy so she could walk away with everything. I also started recording her calls, just in case I needed concrete proof of her lies. She'd get angry whenever I brought it up, but I didn't care. I had to protect myself, and if that meant secretly recording her manipulative conversations, so be it. I'd learned that trust was a one-way street. She'd betrayed me so many times, I couldn't afford to believe anything she said anymore. Every word, every gesture was a part of her plan to manipulate her way out of this mess. The most frustrating part was her constant denial. She kept insisting she was innocent and that I was just jealous or paranoid. Meanwhile, she was planning her next move, probably trying to secure her financial future at my expense. She'd even gone as far as to threaten me, saying if I didn't back off, she'd drag me through court and make sure I paid her everything she claimed she was owed. That's when I realized I had to act fast, to get ahead of her lies before she could spin them any further. I was angry, not just at her betrayal, but at myself for not catching on sooner. How could I have missed the signs? How did I not see that the woman I married was capable of this level of deception? I felt stupid, embarrassed, and furious all at once, but I also felt a strange sense of determination. This wasn't going to end with her walking away with a fortune she didn't deserve. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I was going to expose her for the liar and manipulator she truly was. The game was on, and I was ready to play it to the end. Over the next couple of weeks, the situation escalated quickly. I had my lawyer digging into every legal angle, and I started building my own case to counter hers. She kept trying to claim that I was the one dragging things out, that I was trying to ruin her just because I suspected the truth. She was good at spinning stories, blaming me for her own actions, painting herself as the innocent victim, and insisting that her claims of the $200 settlement were legitimate. But I knew better now. I had all the evidence, bank statements, emails, her own words caught on tape, and I was determined to turn the tables. One evening she called me crying, saying I was destroying her life, and that I was a terrible husband for accusing her of cheating and stealing. I just listened, knowing she was trying to manipulate me again. I didn't say much, just told her I had enough evidence to prove her lies and that I wasn't going to back down. That's when she went into full-blown panic mode, calling her lawyer, yelling on the phone, trying to come up with some new story to save herself. Meanwhile, I started to see how deep her deception ran. She'd been secretly transferring money into accounts in her sister's name, hiding assets, and even trying to buy a new house behind my back. I found emails where she discussed getting rid of me and protecting her interests, all while pretending to be the caring wife. It was sickening. She was willing to burn everything we built together just to save herself. One of the biggest shocks came when I discovered that she'd been secretly working with Jake, our lawyer, from the very beginning of this mess. I found email exchanges where they discussed how to maximize her settlement and cover their tracks. It was blatant collusion. I couldn't believe I'd trusted this guy for years. I felt sick. How could someone I considered a friend, a professional, be so corrupt? I immediately contacted the Bar Association and reported Jake's misconduct. I knew I had to take legal action against him, too, if I wanted any chance of winning this battle. She kept denying everything, of course. She tell her friends and family I was just jealous, that I was trying to control her, that she was the innocent victim in all this. Her charm and bitchy attitude made it hard to get through to anyone else, but I knew the truth. I had to be strategic. I kept gathering more evidence, more proof of her lies and illegal activities, and prepared for the next stage of the fight. Then came the day I finally decided to confront her head-on. I told her I was filing for full custody of the kids, that I'd expose her financial scams, and that I'd fight her in court with everything I had. Her face twisted with anger and she spat at me. "You'll regret this. You're going to lose everything, and I'll make sure you never see your kids again." I just looked at her and said, "Good. Because I won't let you ruin their lives with your lies and greed." That moment felt like a turning point. I was done playing nice. It was time to fight dirty if I had to. I also hired an investigator to follow her around. I needed to see what she was up to when she thought nobody was watching. Turns out, she was meeting with more shady characters, people who could help her hide assets or even destroy evidence. It was obvious she was trying to cover her tracks even more. I recorded some of these meetings, just in case I needed to use them in court. I was prepared to go all out. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about catching her in the act and making sure she paid for what she'd done. The emotional toll was heavy. Every day brought new surprises, more lies, more betrayals, more reasons to hate what she'd become. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind for too long, trusting someone who was capable of tearing our life apart for her own gain. I wondered how she could look herself in the mirror knowing what she was doing, how someone I loved could turn into this manipulative, ruthless person. Despite everything, I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to stay strong for myself, for the kids, and for whatever shred of integrity I could cling to. The fight was far from over, but I was no longer in the dark. I'd uncovered her lies, and I was ready to expose her to everyone who needed to see the truth. This was a war. I just hoped I had enough strength left to see it through. The court hearings came faster than I expected, and when they did, I was ready. I had all my evidence organized, the emails, bank statements, recordings, witness testimonies. My lawyer was sharp, and I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. She tried to spin her narrative, claiming I was abusive, controlling, and that she was the real victim here. She even brought her family and friends to testify about how terrible I supposedly was. But I had the facts, and I knew how to use them. During the court sessions, she kept insisting that she was owed the $200, $0 settlement, claiming we'd agreed on it without my knowledge. She argued that I'd been neglecting her, that I was emotionally abusive, and that she was simply trying to protect her future. Her tone was bitchy, manipulative, and full of false tears, but I stayed calm. I knew I had to let the evidence speak for itself. I presented everything, proof of her illegal asset transfers, her secret meetings with shady characters, and her collusion with Jake. The judge looked skeptical at first, but as I laid out the facts, her facade cracked. Meanwhile, she was losing her composure. She started yelling, accusing me of harassment, trying to ruin her, and destroying her reputation. But I didn't flinch. I knew the game she was playing. She was desperate to keep her money and her new life far away from the mess she'd created. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut her off. It was clear she was losing ground. The pivotal moment came when I introduced the recordings of her meetings with Jake. The court listened as she discussed how to inflate her assets and hide money. The judge looked furious, disappointed in her dishonesty. I saw her face drain of color as she realized her lies were unraveling. It was like watching a house of cards collapse. That's when I knew I was finally gaining the upper hand. After the hearings, I felt a strange sense of relief, but also exhaustion. I'd fought hard, and I knew she'd keep trying to manipulate the system. She'd always been bitchy and cunning, but I'd exposed her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator. The judge ruled in my favor on most points, denying her the huge settlement she claimed and ordering her to pay back assets she'd hidden. But the fight wasn't over yet. There was still the matter of the estate, the custody battle, and making sure she paid for her lies. What hurt the most was seeing how she reacted afterward. She was furious, blaming everyone but herself. She called me a monster, a liar, and said I'd ruined her life. But I knew the truth. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved, and now I was just trying to get back what was rightfully mine. The entire ordeal made me realize how blind I'd been. I trusted her, believed in her, and she turned out to be someone I didn't recognize anymore. In the end, I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. I also learned that no matter how bitchy, manipulative, or deceitful someone might be, the truth always has a way of coming out, if you're willing to fight for it. I'm not sure what the future holds now, but I do know one thing: I won't let anyone manipulate or destroy me again. I've been through hell, but I'm still standing, and that's more than I could have said a few months ago. After everything was said and done, I found myself sitting in what was left of my house, looking at the mess she'd created and feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The court had finally put an end to her lies, her schemes, and her manipulations. She was ordered to pay back assets, and the judge dismissed most of her false claims about the settlement. But the scars ran deep. I'd lost my trust, my sense of security, and honestly, a part of myself along the way. In the aftermath, I had to rebuild. I sold the house, divided what was left of the estate, and started to piece my life back together. The hardest part was the aftermath with the kids. I fought for custody, and while I didn't get everything I wanted, I got enough to keep them safe from her influence. Seeing her trying to play the victim, crying about how unfair everything was, made me realize how much she'd twisted reality to serve her own needs. She's still bitchy, still manipulative, just in a different way now. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and resilience. I trusted someone I loved with everything, and she turned out to be someone I never knew. It's a brutal lesson, but I'm grateful I caught her lies before she could do more damage. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what's yours. I had to gather evidence, expose her lies, and stand my ground against her manipulations. It was exhausting, but I don't regret it. If anything, I feel a strange sense of pride that I didn't let her get away with destroying my life. The experience has changed me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of the warning signs. I don't trust blindly anymore, and I don't take anything for granted. I know that people can surprise you in bad ways, and that sometimes the most bitchy, manipulative ones are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. It's a harsh truth, but one I had to face. To anyone out there dealing with betrayal like this, whether it's infidelity, lies about money, or manipulation, I'll say this: stay strong. Gather your evidence. Don't let them gaslight you. Fight for what's right, even if it means playing dirty. Because in the end, the truth is the only thing that will set you free. And trust me, it's worth every fight, every sleepless night, and every ounce of pain. I survived this chaos, and I'm finally starting to rebuild my life, better, stronger, and more aware than ever.